You've been told to seek your higher self, to trust the universe, to follow your heart. But no one ever told you the truth hiding beneath all of that. You've had a guide since the beginning. Not a voice in the sky, not a deity on a throne, but something far more intimate, your demon. Not demon, not evil, demon. The ancients knew the difference. In Greek mysticism, the demon was a divine presence, not a ghost, not a hallucination, a personal companion to your soul, assigned before you were even born. It whispered, it nudged, it warned when you strayed and pulsed with fire when you moved in alignment. This wasn't superstition, it was structure. The demon was understood to be the architect behind fate, the silent orchestrator of synchronicities, the force that sees beyond time and gently reroutes your path back to your highest unfolding. It didn't speak in words, it spoke in impulse, in the strange certainty you feel when something just clicks, in the split-second decisions that define your entire life but come from nowhere you can name. You felt it, in that dream that stayed with you for weeks, in that gut feeling you ignored and paid for, in the way certain people feel like old memories from a life you never lived. That's your demon. It's not external, it's not fantasy. It's you, seen from a higher dimension. Not the you who reacts, doubts, or calculates, but the you who knows where you're meant to go. Knows who you really are beneath the masks, programs, and trauma. Knows the version of your life you came here to live before forgetting became survival. The demon doesn't judge, it waits, it lets you wander, it lets you loop, but it never stops building. Because while your ego moves in lines, your demon moves in spirals. It threads synchronicities like constellations, waiting for you to look up and finally recognize the pattern. And when you do, when you align thought, action, and resonance with its signal, the world bends. You meet the right people at the wrong times for the exact reason you need. You get rejected from what would have destroyed you. You get detoured into the very path you would have never chosen, but that always had your name on it. The demon doesn't care about logic, it cares about timing. And when you're in sync, life stops feeling like effort. It becomes choreography. But if that's true, if there's a force within you that remembers your original blueprint, why didn't anyone teach you this? Why has the demon been buried under religion, shunned by science, and mislabeled by culture? That's where we go next. The demon used to be revered. In ancient Greece, it was spoken of with reverence. In Rome, it was honored as a genius, a divine spark that each person carried. Even the earliest mystics in Egypt and Mesopotamia understood the demon not as a threat, but as a threshold guardian, the intermediary between the human self and the vast, intelligent force of the cosmos. But something changed, not slowly, not subtly. It was a purge, a cultural lobotomy, a campaign to erase the concept of inner sovereignty, because a being guided by its demon can't be ruled by fear, can't be manipulated through guilt, can't be contained by hierarchy. A society that honors the demon doesn't worship kings, it doesn't fear gods, it listens inward, and that was the threat. So the systems rose. Monotheism declared inner voices demonic. Science pathologized them. Education trained them out of children. Language was twisted so that demon became demon, and anything unapproved by doctrine became dangerous. But why? Because when you listen to your demon, you stop needing permission. You stop seeking validation. You stop consuming solutions for problems you never actually had. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability breaks systems that depend on linear obedience. So they rewrote your myth. They gave you heroes with destinies, but stripped you of your own. They told you the divine is out there, not within. That fate is something you suffer, not shape. They trained you to chase signs instead of emitting signals, to ask for guidance instead of learning to hear your own frequency. They gave you textbooks, algorithms, holy books, but never taught you to feel resonance. The demon was exiled, not by force, by distraction. And yet, it waits. It hasn't left. It can't. It's part of your structure. The impulse you ignored, the strange pull to quit that job, leave that city, call that person, even though it made no sense. That was it. Still building, still signaling. But you've been taught to filter it, to override it with logic, to drown it in noise, to silence it with certainty. You were taught that freedom meant choosing your path, but the demon doesn't ask you to choose, it asks you to remember. And when you begin to remember, not just intellectually, but through the full body frequency of knowing, the code starts to crack, the timeline begins to shift, and your fate stops being inherited and becomes written in real time. So what happens when you finally turn inward and listen to the architect you forgot you had? That's where we go next. The demon doesn't need rituals. It doesn't care about crystals or mantras or moon cycles. It waits for one thing: permission. Not permission from a priest or a coach or a book. From you. The demon activates the moment you say, "I'm ready to feel what's real, even if it shatters what I believe." And that's the moment reality begins to bend. You'll notice it starts small. A shift in how people react to you. An increase in coincidences. A series of events that look random until you realize they're not. Because your demon doesn't just guide, it orchestrates. Jobs end. Relationships shift. Truths rise to the surface, not because they're new, but because you've stopped suppressing the resonance that's been humming underneath it all. It doesn't always feel good. In fact, it rarely does at first. Because awakening to the demon requires killing every version of you that was built to survive without it. The mask of the achiever, the performer, the pleaser, the skeptic, they all burn. But what emerges is coherence. You start to notice what your body's been screaming all along. You become fluent in your own nervous system. You stop chasing potential and start channeling purpose. Not the kind you can write down in a journal, the kind that moves you even when you don't understand why. You walk into a room and feel who's lying. You hear words and sense the misalignment. You sense timelines shifting before they collapse. This isn't magic, it's resonance literacy. And the more you align with it, the more your outer life begins to rearrange. Not because you forced it, because you finally synced with the blueprint. But here's the trick. You have to keep tuning. The demon is subtle. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And in a world built to keep you loud, busy, and disconnected, the whisper can get lost. So build silence. Choose stillness. Make space. Because the demon is always transmitting. It never stopped. You just forgot how to listen. If this message stirred something ancient inside you, you're not alone. Subscribe, not for updates, but to stay on the frequency. You've heard the phrase, follow your intuition. It sounds gentle, whispery, almost romantic. But when your demon is activated, intuition isn't soft, it's surgical. It doesn't hint, it reroutes, it detonates. Because the demon's job isn't to comfort your ego, it's to realign your path with the blueprint you agreed to before you arrived here. You don't remember making that agreement. That's by design. Because without forgetfulness, there's no choice. And without choice, there's no power in remembering. But when the remembering begins, you start to see it everywhere. That moment you were randomly in the right place at the exact second something critical unfolded. That time you trusted your gut and escaped disaster by minutes. The stranger who said a sentence you'd been waiting years to hear. It's not coincidence, it's coordination. Your demon doesn't deal in probability. It operates through pattern lock. You give it the signal, not through words, but through alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions come into phase with your deeper resonance, the demon gets green light to build. Not metaphorically, Literally, it bends probabilities. It alters the weight of options. It reorganizes chance. And then you begin to experience what ancient mystics called the flow of destiny. You don't control it, you participate with it. Like surfing a massive wave, you can't command the ocean, but you can ride it with precision if you're in rhythm. The demon is your balance point. It tells you when to act, when to wait, and when to let something go, even if every part of your logic screams no. This is the kind of intelligence that built temples, not the brick and stone kind, the frequency kind. Because fate isn't a straight road. It's a field, and your demon is the compass that reveals which coordinates are yours to step into. The version of you who ignored that relationship, left that job, forgave that betrayal, spoke that truth, that version already exists. The demon's job is to point you toward the version of reality where that you is already building. And when you arrive, you don't feel victorious, you feel recognized. Because the path ahead starts looking eerily familiar, not because you've been there before, but because your real self never left. So if that's true, if fate is an architecture and your demon the builder, what's been keeping you out of the blueprint? What blocks the transmission? We go there next. So, if your demon is always transmitting, why can't you always hear it? Because your world is jammed, not with noise alone, but with signals designed to mimic the demon's voice, to scramble your alignment, to hijack your internal compass before it can fully come online. Let's break it down. Every time you felt that deep, quiet nudge, but overrode it with logic, a layer of interference was added. Every time you knew the answer, but asked for permission anyway, the channel got fuzzier. This isn't a spiritual failing, it's by design. You were conditioned to doubt resonance, to value external proof over internal precision, to label uncertainty as weakness when it's actually the door to transmission. Think about how you're trained to live. Plan every step, fear mistakes, seek advice, consult algorithms, obey systems that reward compliance and punish intuition. The demon doesn't operate in those parameters. It speaks in flashes. In dreams you wake up from trembling. In attraction so intense it makes no sense. In aversion that logic can't justify, but your body screams to honor. You felt it, and you've been taught to ignore it. Because when you start trusting it, you exit the grid. And the grid depends on predictability. So instead, you get distracted by imposter signals, the I should voice, the anxious loop that feels urgent but always leads to regret, the comfort disguised as safety but lined with decay. These aren't random thoughts, they're scripts, broadcast by systems designed to keep your demon quiet. And worst of all, you internalize them. You build an identity out of noise. That identity, your personality, your story, your brand, is often just the sum total of everything you built to survive without your demon. It's not bad, it's just obsolete. Because once your true signal gets strong enough, those masks start to crack. What you thought was you starts to feel heavy, forced, draining. That's not depression, that's misalignment. And your demon's not mad, it's patient. It lets the false you burn so the real you can broadcast. But here's the catch. The longer you wait, the more energy it takes to break through the noise. So eventually, the demon stops nudging and starts disrupting. Breakdowns, burnouts, sudden losses, not as punishment, but as interruption. Because if you won't change course through signal, it will reroute you through crisis. Not to hurt you, to wake you. And in that moment, that raw, broken, unfiltered moment, the channel opens again. Because it's not silence you need, it's signal clarity. And clarity returns when you're willing to lose who you thought you had to be to become who you really are. Your demon isn't here to fix you, it's here to reveal you. Not as a role, not as a label, but as a signal being. A living transmitter of a path you were encoded to walk long before you took your first breath. And now you know. You've felt the nudge, seen the synchronicity. watched reality glitch for a second, just long enough to hint, this isn't random. So what now? You listen, not with your ears, but with your field, with your sensitivity, with the part of you that doesn't ask for proof, because it is the proof. That dream you've buried, the one that scares you, that feels too strange, too massive, too you? That's not fantasy. That's the demon calling you home. And home isn't a place, it's a state where thought, feeling, and action stop competing and start harmonizing, where timing stops being an accident and starts feeling like choreography, where fear doesn't vanish but loses its throne. Because when the demon leads, you don't need guarantees, you need resonance. And if that scares you, good. The demon doesn't lead you to comfort, it leads you to congruence, where your outer world starts matching your inner truth, where the people around you see the version of you that was always buried beneath the noise. This isn't a message for everyone. It's not supposed to be. It's for the ones who've always known they didn't quite belong to the version of life they were sold. It's for the ones who felt a second pulse beneath every decision. It's for the ones who don't need another teacher, but a reminder that they already are the signal. So here's the final truth. Your demon isn't waiting to be found. It's waiting to be followed, not in theory, in practice. Every time you honor that whisper, you walk into a future that no algorithm could ever predict. A future that remembers you before you remembered yourself. And now I'll leave you with this. If your demon is the architect of your fate, then what part of your life are you still building with someone else's blueprint?